Mr. Grow It. From the Stash Podcast.
As a small, American-owned online smoke shop, Freeze Pipe specializes in creating a unique line of freezable bongs, bubblers, pipes, and more. So what makes these pieces so special? Well, that's the secret glycerin coils. Glycerin is a non-toxic gel-like liquid commonly found in food and sweeteners. It freezes quicker and stays frozen longer than water, making it the perfect cooling agent for your smoking needs. Freeze Pipe's thick glass pieces can cool smoke down by 300 degrees. That means you can enjoy bigger, smoother tokes without any unpleasant side effects. So why not give Freeze Pipe a try? Head over to their website and take advantage of their 420 sale, running from April 3rd to April 21st. Make sure you use discount code THESTASH10 at checkout.
Thanks to CLtv for sponsoring this episode. Some of you have seen me use the Growcraft X3 330-watt LED grow light in several of my grows, and I love the results. The X3 is for a 2x4 grow space, but they have other Growcraft models for other size grow spaces such as the X1, X1 Mini, X3 Mini, and X6. These grow lights provide coverage for 2x2, 3x3, 4x4, and 5x5 grow spaces. Also, you can choose either a veg spectrum or a flowering full spectrum. Go to their website, chilledgrowlights.com, and use the discount code THESTASH15 to save on any of their products. And also put a link in the video description section below.
From the Stash Podcast, we are back, boys. Live with us over here.
On location.
Another
making it happen.
week.
Doing it, boys.
Oh, look at that.
Wow.
That was a weird threesome there.
It's a little awkward. It's kind of like a white dude thing. We do that. But
yeah, but we're getting it better at it because we've been doing these for so long now.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got a lot to talk about today. But before we do, I want to give a huge shout out to AC Infinity, man. If you guys don't know, AC Infinity putting in so much support to help make this podcast happen, making it possible for the three of us to chill in the same room talking about what we're passionate about. So really huge shout out to AC Infinity. If you guys check out acinfinity.com, use promo code THESTASH15. It's going to save you a few dollars off at checkout. Do us a favor, go check them out on Instagram at AC Infinity and tell them thank you for supporting the boys and From the Stash podcast. Because we got a good episode today. What are we talking about today,
Absolutely,
Chris?
man.
Prohibition Stories Part 3. This time it's going to be Growhibition. So you're talking about some grow stories back in the day.
Oh,
It'll be
man.
fun. It'll be a good one.
It's great because it makes you appreciate where you are now when you look back at stuff like this. You know what I'm saying? Back when it was like, we'll say Croptober hunting season, or the restrictions and concerns of parents or government officials finding your stuff. Like, it's amazing. I know people talk about like the plant count police, but those were a real thing at one point. You could have 0 plants, and anything over that you get in trouble for. So it's pretty crazy, man. And all of us kind of coming from different regions and having different experiences and different backgrounds, some overlap, but I feel like this is one for sure that's going to have some differences in terms of the experiences we had.
Yeah.
You know?
Growing up in 3 different parts of the continent.
World even. Yeah, the continent. It kind of just sound more
North
accurate,
America.
but
yeah, right. So yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit different for each of us. I know that I didn't start even when I started growing, it wasn't like I was starting to learn to grow. I was just planting beans and hoping for the best.
Yep,
You know,
checking
so
the beanstalk.
yeah. So Prohibition really didn't help me to kind of find a lot of the answers. It wasn't until I was able to freely search the internet without fear of prosecution that I could look for decent information, and that's when things started to happen. But grow. I think I can honestly say now that I've grown more out of Prohibition than I did during Prohibition. Allegedly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I was, like I said in prior episodes, I was a turd as a teenager. So I had some that were mine and others that were others. So the amount of plants I experienced pre-legalization or in the Prohibition days was nowhere near what it is now. But the feeling of finding those is like that first time getting stoned where it's like, oh my gosh. It's like you're in the mecca of everything. Like, this is amazing. I can't believe I'm with a live plant, you know? Especially if you're smoking brick. To have a plant like that is amazing, but then you don't know what to do with it. No education, you know, an old High Times magazine, but that's about it. It really made it so those Prohibition days of trying to have a successful grow or find successfully grown plants was a lot more few and far in between. I feel like more people were doing the finding a bean in their bag and just putting it in one of their mom's pots for plants and just being like, yeah, put it near the window. See what happens. And it sprouts. She's like, I'm growing a plant. And it's really just this little tiny little seed sprout. I'm trying to flex on everybody like it's something big. I did that for a few years. and would tell people I was growing, and it was just like growing clovers. You know what I'm saying? Like it was nothing. But over time, I got more like, I wouldn't say ballsy, but I lived in the country for a little while, so I was able to grow outside. And I was like, screw it, why not? May as well try it. I got a few good harvests. My first one, though, was the worst one. That was when I thought it would make sense to just put it in my mom's garden, like her regular plants, and nobody would notice. And she didn't notice for the longest time, like no issues at all. But I happened to tell some other people about it. Word got out, and it was a monster of a plant. And eventually my mom knew, and I was like, hey, like, like you smoke, I smoke. Like, I'm 16 at the time. Like, just like, let it go. I'll give you half first, And she's like, Robert? Like, she was pissed. She was not happy. But I was an ignorant person, and I told my buddy who I talked about just the other day, my Prohibition buddy that we used to go and party all the time, and he had an even louder mouth than me. And he went and told some people who were total thieves, and they stole my stuff, and happened to be that he was involved with the stealing of them. He told them where the plants were. He was involved with it, and it was one big plant and one smaller one. But they hopped over the fence. This is when I lived in the country, too. Straight, like, destroyed the fence. Like, pushed, I don't know, some super fat person must have been with him. I don't know. But broke part of the fence and dragged him. You could see the whole drag mark. And there was buds that they didn't get through that fell off. I was like, oh, my gosh, man. I couldn't believe it. Like, years passed by. At the time, I'm sitting there with this kid, the guy who was my friend at the time. And he's like, dude, we're going to kick their ass, bro. We find who took these plants. What the hell, man? And I'm like, dude, this is crazy. I was harvesting in a few days. Like, what the hell? Fast forward a few years later, I'm smoking with a buddy. And he's like, man, I feel awful, man. I can't even just sit here. He's like, dude, that was me. I was one of the people who stole your plants. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, dude. I mean, I didn't think anything of it. Brad was like, I'll give you half if you grab them. This and they kept talking. I was like, hold on. Who said what? It's like, yeah, you didn't know he was involved? I was like, oh, dude, really? Really? Like somebody I thought was my dog, like ride or die. And at the time I still was kind of cool with him, but he was getting heavier in the opiates and stuff, so we faded apart. But we were sitting there looking for people to attack over this. Meanwhile, he was one of the people. Like, just smiling in my face.
Scumbag.
Backstabbing.
They always say you'll get backstabbed by those that are the closest to you.
Yeah.
Before it'll be someone that you don't even know.
My mom was so mad because it was more that somebody came to our house and stole from us, and it was because I was, loose-lipped, and I let it get out there, and it was just one of those things, like, only one person would have known where it was. My mom had all these sunflower plants that were so big that covered it up, like, you couldn't see it from the road at all. You'd have to have gone in.
And know it was there. Yep.
Yeah, and this dude knew, and it just pissed me off, and what was even worse is at one point I smoked that stuff, because the dude who told me was
would have brought it over.
Yeah, then the guy told me, he said, that
bro.
was that carrot weed that you paid $60 for the quarter. I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, you remember that? I was like, dude, that was fire. I use that in analogies to people. Like, that was yours, dude. It was great. You grew great.
Great
like,
job.
Wow, what a punk. I got played. They stole my stuff, smiled in my face, and I bought it and smoked it with them.
And they sold it back.
Damn, that's called karma for me being an ass to other people.
right,
To the one kid I was talking about who was playing. Man, like that's where Prohibition days, you got to hide stuff more. You're more able to really keep it in a legal setup. You literally had to just stash it. And in that case, somebody could just take it. I used to literally go looking for plants at a certain point. This is where karma got me. Because I'm like, oh, it's October, Croptober season. Let's go hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And literally just walking around the woods smelling like a dog, man.
You'll find it.
Yeah,
you'll find
we
it.
literally have found plants, dude. Took them back and then dried them with like either in the oven or in the microwave or with a hairdryer to smoke it like right then. And we were like, I'm so big, dude. This is so fire. We're just dumb kids, didn't know what we were doing. But it's like that person is laughing because of the karma that hit me.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what goes around comes around, right?
Yeah. I came across a lot of guerrilla grows back then. And I remember I think it was the first time I've ever seen plants like in real life. And I was riding around on my bikes with my friends, and this buddy knew of a place where there was a grow. And it was kind of by his house. So we're at his house, and then we rode our bikes pretty much across the street. There was like an auto body shop. And behind the auto body shop was a patch of woods. We rode our bikes into the woods, parked our bikes, and then kept on walking back in throughout the woods. And then it started to open up a little bit. So you could start to see sunshine coming in through the woods. So it was like an open area. And he showed us where the plants were. And it was around chicken wire, right? Trying to make sure no big animals are coming towards it. So there was definitely chicken wire there. And I remember seeing the small plants. And they were just seedlings. They had to have been like 2 weekers. You know what I mean? A couple nodes on them or whatever. And we were so dumb. We had no idea what we were doing. We literally
Chopped
ripped them out of the ground and then took them, put them in the microwave to dry them, and then attempted to smoke them. But we were so dumb back then.
You got so high.
I was like 14 or 15. I had to have been like 14 or something like
It's
that.
crazy. We did so much of the same stuff, man. Like from different sides. You're at the east side, I'm Midwest, and we're just like doing same turd
Stoners
style
be
stuff.
stoners, bro.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a universal language. Like, how do we even know these things?
This is why our community bonds, man. We understand what it's like to struggle, to try to thrive in a system that simply doesn't want you to thrive. You know, it's that's why we have these bonds. I think, you know.
Well, this
Yeah,
is
and
where I
then
kind of feel like
after-
we have to give back now because, like, this is all the extra free information is because, like, we were pieces of shit in the past. So,
Teenage
pay
years.
it forward, baby.
Yeah, I know. I'm a completely different person than I was back then. You know, I was like, oh my god. But I remember like going back there months later and just seeing the chicken wire all matted down. Like the guy obviously saw that his plants were gone, right, and abandoned that location, so destroyed the chicken wire and matted it down. And yeah, I don't think we checked years after that, but apparently that was year after year after year he would grow there. You know, we messed it all up because we took his plants. You know, it was so dumb, so dumb.
Just think if that was you now, like if that was you, those were your
How
plants.
pissed.
You're like,
That's
you'd
what I'm
just
saying.
be pissed. Be like, they were 2 weeks old.
Like, come on, you idiots. Why did you-
Idiots. You know what I mean? Like, I hope you cloned them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like, did something or
damn.
took it and replanted it. Like, what was your plan?
Yeah,
You're like, I've seen stuff like that too, where buddies I've had have had their outdoor plants stolen and they were just out of veg. I'm like,
yeah,
you think maybe they replanted them?
yeah. They
What was that?
were they all cut on 45s?
Like, did they-
What
what did they do?
45s. I didn't get it.
You know?
Yeah, my buddy. You mentioned guerrilla style, man. Man, shout out to my buddy Ty, man. He was the first one to really embrace the idea of growing, and boy, this guy went ham with it too. He had his a property that was out in the middle of nowhere, and he started guerrilla growing, and he essentially had this massive brush, and would like wade through it, and then cut out an entire maybe like a 9 by 9 square patch in there, and then planted a bunch of plants. And he brought us in there, and these things were huge. Like, it was amazing because I'd never seen plants before, let alone outdoor girls, you know. And when I remember we were paintballing, and he's like, "Don't run." We're running through the patch, and we get into this spot. I'm like, "Man, I found this awesome spot. It was like cleared out, man. I could hide in there and everything." He's like, "Were you stomping in there or what, bro? That's where I got all my plants." I was like, "Oh, I didn't even notice, man." So they were really young at the time there. But he was the first one to really teach me that this plant is all about giving. He harvested, I don't even know how much, man. But the wife and I went over to his place to go and kind of hang out and chill. And he hands me, it wasn't even a big jar. It was like a smaller than a pickle jar, maybe like a jam jar or something, and it's just full of herb. And he's like, "Here, take this." And I was like, grams were hard to come by at this time, you know what I mean? Let alone he just gave me like a half ounce for free. And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, man, go ahead. This is part of my bounty, my harvest. You take it and let me know what you think." From that moment on, that's when I realized that your harvests are meant to gift. They're meant to be shared, you know? And I think that's a very valuable lesson, and that's part of this community that brings us together. It's like a Thanksgiving feast almost, you know. It's when it's harvest time, it brings family and friends together, and they celebrate the bounties of their work, you know. And yeah,
They all get together at a large table and sit down at the table, hold hands, pray, and then they
And then
go.
say, all right, everybody start trimming.
start trimming.
Start trimming.
If you
All
want
right,
to
go.
smoke,
They get their bowl
start
packed
trimming.
and they
Yep.
start consuming.
I don't want to do this anymore. I don't wanna
Everybody strip down, take your clothes
yeah,
off.
neck it. Yeah.
Talks about how thankful they are.
Yeah, I'm really thankful. Thank you for letting me be here.
I remember before I started growing, right when, like, I guess the idea of medical was coming to Michigan before we actually had the laws passed. I knew multiple people who had like full indoor hydroponic grows, and they were just insane to me. Like, I couldn't even imagine. Like, that smell was so consistent when fresh butter. I'm like, oh, I've never had this smell before. Vibrant green, beautiful stuff. They were using wing hoods with the HPSs and 1,000 watters. Super hot, old school. But like, it was the most euphoric place to go into. And I remember I'd just go in there and I'd offer to trim for free. Like, no problem, dude. I'd love to, bro. I'd love to be involved. Like, give me some smokes. I don't even care, man. I'm gonna come in and
Or be
trim.
involved,
And now I look back, I'm like, wow, man, I can't believe, like, I hate trimming now.
right?
But I see when people are excited.
to find
they're
one of
like,
those
dude, I
kids for
love trimming,
myself.
man. I'm so into it. It's like, well, how many harvests have you had?
I haven't
Like, one
harvested
for like a year.
I've never harvested before.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, I hate it. I don't
Yeah.
hate it. It's just,
No, but like
it's anxiety driven because I know what's coming.
Well,
It's
that's
I got
the work.
But the bowl trimmer, I'm not gonna say it just saved my day, man.
AC
Saved
Infinity.
my day.
100%. That's the innovative things that have come out has really made it. Nowadays, it's easier.
Yeah.
Back then, it was just scissors. I remember using like small, like yarn scissors or something.
Legalities helped that. Prohibition hindered that. People couldn't actively sell products that were related to this industry for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
It put a big halo or a big spotlight on you, and you know the ability now that, and of course, prohibition is still in some places or in many places.
Yeah.
And so I know if you guys have stories, we'd love to hear them. Allegedly, but you know, it's like now that we're exploring legality or regulation and legalization. That's the word I'm looking for. More and more companies can come up with products that are making this way easier for us.
100%.
I remember the first time I grew. It's a flagship milestone for me because I knew nothing about plants at all. I remember that my buddy started growing. We were in university, and he's like, "Pigeons, come check this out, man! Like, look what I'm doing." And I thought it was the most amazing thing, you know, like never grew before. And I didn't know this, but like growers are really not revered, but like they're few and far between. Because when we go out into events and stuff, like when people find out that we're growers, there's a level of respect all of a sudden that's just established. Like it's like, oh, you grow this, and then forget about when you show up with a pillowcase of herb, and they're like,
Pillowcase.
you know, yeah, two of them if you're this guy. So it's like, you know, it's like, you know, so it's like, I remember my first I didn't know anything, and so I put the plant in. My buddy had it. I thought it was amazing. He got a little sketched out, so he's like, "Here, take this." So I took it to my place. I had this crawl space of a basement that it was like gravel floor, brick walls for like half of it, and then it was just dirt. And it was actually my sanctuary. But I started growing down there, and I didn't know anything. And I just put a little desk lamp in there, and I put the plant under it. And I immediately put it on 12 and 12. Because I was like, yeah, herb grows on 12 and 12. Everybody knows that.
Yeah,
That's
weed,
what you're supposed
weed
to do.
hours.
It's weed hours. And so this little thing grew to be about yay tall, and it immediately started flowering. And I think I probably harvested like maybe a little over an eighth. And yeah, big load on that one. And I remember that I was like, I want to smoke it, man. I want to smoke it.
Oh yeah.
Before it's even off the plant, man. I was like, oh, okay, it's done. Now what do I do? And it was far from being done for that eighth. It's probably week 4, week 5 or something. I was like, it's done.
Hairs,
It's done.
Look at the hairs on it. Lots of sugar
Well,
and hair.
yeah, everyone says the hairs, when they start to go orange, it's done.
Once your plant goes ginger, it's ready to go.
Yeah.
You know?
And so
Like
I
the soul.
chopped it down, and I was like, well, I can't. I tried to smoke it, and it
was
couldn't
like,
even burn. Yeah, it's just like staying green. So I took some tin foil, and I made it into a little bowl, and I put it in a toaster, and I like popped the toaster, put the weed in there, and put the toaster down, and it would warm it up, and it probably burnt off 90% of the 6% of terpenes that I had in it. But let me tell you, man, I got so high, bro. You know, like it's your first. That's why I always say, man, it's like you can't grow bad herb. You know what I mean? If you grow it for yourself, like you're still gonna be incredibly biased towards it because it's like your first car. If you bought a Chevy, I bet you're a Chevy guy. If you bought a Ford, I bet you're a Ford guy. It's like my first herb. This is my herb. It's mine. I enjoy it. I didn't have to pay for it. I am feeling something, you know. So I'm
Part
always
of it,
biased.
I feel like, is a little placebo of that, like it's
Totally,
mine and I'm getting this.
100%.
But like,
I
do
suffer
it.
from that.
Well,
I know
feel
I
like
do.
if you just follow the basic steps, like a recipe,
Right,
you won't
right.
grow bad bud. It may not be the best, but it's going to be better than just some brick bud.
That's
know?
right.
But you can pull your plant too early, and that's bad. Like that's what I did my first grow, which was not a legal grow,
My
obviously.
first 20 grows were pulled too early, bro.
Well, if you do it in Michigan outside, we got these weird seasons where all of a sudden, like, winter's here in September. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And other times it'll be November and it's still like 60, 70 degrees. This was one of those September ones. So it started dumping snow while I still had plants outside. I was like, oh my God, this is probably a 13-weeker. maybe longer. It was nowhere near ready. Literally just white pistils, green, barely any actual bud or like flower formed. But I still chopped her down, dried it properly though, because I was like, I started to learn things after my 4th time growing. And I put it upside down and I was just like, there's no flower per se to this. And I remember when I harvested it, it was just literally just all pistils. Every single, like, there was no flower at all. You break it up. And back then, there was people like, oh man, I love to just smoke bowls of the hairs, bro. Like, they just pack all orange and stuff. Like, check
I've
it out,
done
it's
that.
so lit. I didn't get so lit, but
I'm sure there's some trichome.
well, it had
on
a
there.
little bit of flavor, but it was like that chlorophyll kind of piney, skunky flavor to it. So there was something there, and it was better than the brick I was getting at the time. So I'd mix that with the brick, and then I was getting super baked because the brick actually had enough to get me kind of high. And then the chlorophyll unfinished plant was the flavor that was the uplifter. So I was like, this is fire. And I thought it was the dankest. And I just had like a jar with no flour at all, just loaded orange. Like, it was the weirdest looking thing ever. I thought it was the best. I thought I had it on lock. I was like, man, look at this. Trichomes was not even a conversation. The word trichomes. People said triclones.
Yeah, right.
Trichromes.
It was all about hairs, man. It was all about
Yeah.
hairs when I was.
Yeah, get
Oh,
these
yeah.
hairs, bro. They get you lit.
It really was. Yeah, you guys had. I think you did a little bit more successful than I was on my first grow. I mean,
Oh,
my
yeah?
first grow was
You didn't
pretty
harvest
bad.
an eighth?
Pretty bad. Didn't harvest anything.
Oh,
so
damn.
I've mentioned this on. I'm trying to think. I don't think I mentioned on this channel, but I mentioned on my channel before. Some people have heard this story, but way back then, I had to have been still in my bike days before having a car. So I was probably 15-ish or something like that when I first attempted growing.
Bar spins and stuff.
Yeah.
Come on, bro.
Bar spins, tail whips, all that good stuff. But me and my buddy went back into the woods, and of course outdoors. We didn't really have the capability to grow indoors. We're all living with our parents at the time, But growing outdoors, we went deep into the woods and found this stream. So knowing how plants go, they need water, right? So saw the stream, saw the moist soil next to it, saw some sun. Just happened to be down on that spot where I wanted to plant on. And I was like, okay, so this should be a good spot. So I planted seeds, swag seeds, of course. It's all we had was Mexican brick back then. So any of the seeds that I got out of those bags is what I was putting down there. So I put it down there and thought it was great, had no idea what we were doing. And literally came back months later, see these tall, spindly plants with nothing on them. Oh, this was a failure. I think there was some like deficiencies on there and stuff like that. But I was actually looking back at it, I'm kind of surprised it grew the way it did. It was probably 3 or 4 feet tall, but it was just like one straight branch, barely any leaves on it. I think there was some yellowing on there as well. But we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know the difference between males and females. I didn't even think it was flowering yet. You know what I mean? It was like a couple months after we had planted. And I'm pretty sure it was before the sunlight started going down, to initiate flowering. And we didn't get anything from that. We just abandoned it from there. So I do consider that my first grow because the
fair.
plant, because the plant grew. But we, just abandoned it. It wasn't really successful there.
What do you think the problem was? Just too close to the water? Or
A
was it
lack
just
lack
swag?
of knowledge. I think there was
Plant had lack of
also
knowledge.
sunlight. You know what I
It
mean?
was a
Like
dumb plant.
it was in the middle of the woods, and there was barely any sunlight as well. Right? These plants need a lot of full sun. And there's no way it was shaded probably most of the
It
time.
was trying to
there.
shoot up for some light.
Yeah,
Just
exactly. Long
searching.
internode.
That's the prohibition issue, though. Is what are you going to do? You're going to put a plant in the center of a field that has the best sunlight and perfect
Well, you're
exposure.
not going to put it on your porch, right?
Yeah, you're
No.
going to put it in the damp, cold woods that are covered in pine trees that nobody could see anything. And it's like, that's the issue, I feel like. And again, not saying kids should be growing, but even as an adult in a prohibition state, I feel so bad for those of you who are in a state where you can't consume, or an area, province, anywhere that, well, in Canada you can consume everywhere, but growing even.
Yeah, you can't.
Where
You
it's
can
like-
consume everywhere. Well, you can consume. Consumption is legal across the country, but you can't grow.
Well, like, there's no other thing where you can go on YouTube and like or anywhere, and like there's a whole category for like, heroin entertainment, because certain states allow it,
Right.
certain areas allow it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, there's a full area, there's a whole industry, there's a whole community, there's states making billions of dollars. There's companies like AC Infinity who got amazing products. You could live in Indiana and order these things, but it's illegal.
Yeah.
To actually grow it. So you can now, even in prohibition areas, you can have the best of the best like you would in a legal state, but you actually know how to do it. Back then, when it was all across the board, there was literally High Times articles. There was Jorge Cervantes.
That's all you had, man.
Not even Jorge Cervantes at the time.
Not then,
Maybe
no. High Times would
High
have been
Times,
it, man.
yeah.
Like really.
and like Ed Rosenthal.
And Ed Rosenthal worked for High Times.
So like you don't have any sort of knowledge to go into it unless you're a botany expert. Somebody already knows plants, and even then, this particular plant is a little different than others.
Of course it is, yeah.
So it's like,
well, isn't it? It's what do they call it? A type B plant, which is a plant that. Oh my gosh, I'm reaching for this.
a plant that'd be tough to
The
grow.
one that doesn't need doesn't need darkness to grow. During veg, you don't actually need darkness for the plant to grow, which makes it a type B plant, I think, or something. And it's not consistent with many other plants. So yeah, you can be a botanist and know a bunch about plants and know nothing about this plant.
And I think that's where like a lot of times you'll hear people who are into orchids who will have some sort of knowledge that'll be translating into our plant. I feel like it's like you have to have a specialty and knowledge that'll actually make it so you know how to work with that plant. When I started, I was just like, oh, we've grown tomatoes before. I got this. Plant it, plug it, let's go. I've never topped a tomato plant. I've never, if anything, like a trellis around it or a tomato cage, That was my next step once I started getting a little better with the outdoor grows. I'm like, I get tomato cages around them. I'll grow like a tomato, and like that's when I started getting more of a yield. And that's when I started realizing like, oh, I can't grow this particular one during the season because it's never ready. Like it just doesn't finish. Versus other ones were like perfect and prime. And I'm like, this shit is fire. And it was always like crazy quality, nostalgia, mentality, of course. Like then it was probably the best. Now probably would have been mid, But at the time, I was so impressed with everything I had, and it was all bag seeds, every bit of it.
Well, and think too the Prohibition. Think of how it's almost like we got to grow in the closet before everyone else. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, it's like once it became legal, it was like, look at me, I'm a stage 7 grower already.
That's where I feel like Ohio and the Midwest, a lot of these agriculture areas have been doing it in the closet, and I'm sure like Nebraska and other places, and they already have the knowledge. And especially now, when you could literally hop on YouTube or Spotify or iTunes, listen to From the Stash or Garden Talk, any of our shows, and I think become just as good as that person in California or Colorado or Canada, wherever, as we're back then. We just didn't have these capabilities. It's not like we weren't having good genetics or having some even equipment or nature, which is nature. We just didn't know. And knowledge is the biggest factor of having a crappy grow or not. Like it really is. And I think now looking back, I had everything just about right other than I was impatient. I'd pull too early or I'd dry too quick. You know what I'm saying? I learned to train my plant more. I learned to rough it up more, so to speak. I was just doing like the hippies did, and it worked. It yielded decent. It was always good smoke, but I would pull it a little too early, or I would dry it too quickly, or I would smoke it too fast because I thought it was ready, and it didn't give the best example of what it could be. Now we have the knowledge to know, don't do that. You need to let your plant finish. You need to be able to get the best results, and it's the difference between like a good grow and a bad grow is just knowing the process, so to speak. And it's like that's where I agree. Like if you do that, you can't grow a bad bud. If you do the basic process, your bud will be decent. You know what I'm saying? But if you don't have that basic knowledge, don't even. Yeah, I guess you could try it for fun, but then you're gonna be like, I suck at growing. You just don't know how to do it.
You gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah, even if you're just researching on forums. Like I remember when this was like 20 years ago now, when I was just like on forums trying to learn. Never actually took action. This was before I took action, but just starting to learn and seeing how complex it was. But that was only really what you had was just forums, right? There was really no major website. There was no Grow Weed Easy, for example, where you could search and find every topic there is, or almost every topic. But there was a lot of forums, people sharing information. Then you trust the people, that had plants that were showing their plants that looked to be successful. And I feel like I was lucky enough to actually have sort of a mentor, somebody local. So a buddy of mine, actually, one of the successful grows, which I'll talk about, not mine, but my friend's, and he actually mentored me after the fact, which was an indoor grow we had. So he lived in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Gotta give a shout out to Lawrence. I know my Massachusetts people are gonna be like, "Ooh, Lawrence, huh? This is not the best place to live." A lot of people call it the ghetto, but it was about 20, 25 minutes from where I grew up, which was Billerica, Massachusetts. And my buddy lived over in Lawrence, so we drove over to Lawrence, second floor apartment. Walk in and place reeks like weed, right when you walk in there. And immediately I see the nutrient bottles of Fox Farm nutrients, and I'm intrigued because I'm like, what are these? These like, cool looking bottles, right? And he's like, oh, these are nutrients. You give them to the plant every week. Like I started picking his brain and learning how to do it. But seeing his plant shifting over, he had his in like a closet that was underneath a staircase, right? So it was kind of like those diagonal, like
Where
kind of
Harry
cut
Potter
off.
lives.
Yeah, there we go, where he lives. So, you know, he opens up his closet, and I think he actually had the closet door open. And he just had like one of those standing oscillating fans just right there, pointing inward towards the closet. No exhaust, right? He didn't have a exhaust pulling air out. He had his grow light in there and just had a bunch of plants. I think he had 5 or 6 different plants. I remember he had Northern Lights, he had Skunk Number 1, he had Strawberry Cough, NY City Diesel,
wow.
and we would take those clones, and that's kind of where I started taking clones from him and growing eventually. But seeing him be successful, and these plants were flowering and were beautiful and all different cultivars, and it was really kind of inspiring looking back there because I like to grow all different cultivars now and have a variety of different things. But him doing it way back then,
Oh
it was
yeah.
really cool. And just having
Pioneers.
him know what he's doing and be able to pick his brain. Actually, now to this day, I still keep in touch with him, and he actually picks my brain now,
Wow.
which is kind of funny.
Good for you.
You know what I mean? Because I got deeper into it and stuff like that compared to him. But yeah, he had a really successful grow, and we would always be harvesting. And I remember the first time I went over, I think I told this story before, where he randomly called me over his house to hang out. And he called me over, and I walk in and walk through the door, and I see this harvest here. This plant's drying up and stuff like that. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Like, I had no idea what I was walking into. Hands me a pair of trimmers. He's like, get trimming.
I need some help.
Put me to work. Put me to work.
only
And
got
I
20
loved
minutes,
it. It
you
was
can
the
do it.
most exciting thing ever. We talked about how
Yeah.
exciting it is to trim sometimes. I was just in heaven, dude, trying to understand how to trim the plant. He was teaching me. I'm like, do we get to smoke some of this stuff? He's like, oh, it's not ready yet. It's got to cure and all that. You know what I mean? So he's teaching me all that stuff. But it was just really exciting back in those days. You know what I mean? Just getting started, seeing him. I feel like I was fortunate enough to see him be successful, get some basic information from him on how to grow the plant. Because that helped me be more successful faster.
It led you
know?
down the path too, you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
and it got you into the eyes of someone that was inspirational, you know. And I had a few instances where it was like I go to a not necessarily a buddy's house, but an acquaintance house, and he had a garden, and he had like 3 plants and like 2 CFL bulbs at the top of the closet, and these things were so. A few episodes back, I remember I was saying how we like sold my buddy like a leaf of herb. Well, I got it from this guy's house, and like he only had, this thing would have been like 4 feet tall. It might have had like 8 branches coming off of it, and we just thought, wow, you know, this like really happens. And yeah, you know, it's just crazy. We were also talking a few episodes back in regards to the first time we got high and that feeling of giddiness that you get. I feel like it's very similar to your first harvest.
Oh yeah.
I've never felt that feeling again after harvest, because it's like my harvests got bigger
First nut.
and they got,
First nut.
you know, more gruesome in terms of the intensity of the labor, and it just became a source of stress.
Well, you've gotten used to it too.
Remember that feeling right before you're about to chop and you feel bad that you have to cut down the plant?
Dude, I've
You're
literally
"Oh,
said like a
man."
prayer. I'm like, I'm sorry that I don't thank you so much for the work you've done for me. And you're such a great plant. I appreciate you. Just go and slaughter it.
I think it's okay to pay homage.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
man.
and I know friends that when they hunt,
Do a dance around it.
when they hunt and they get a kill, they take a moment. They like to feel the warmth of the animal, and they like to take a moment and just appreciate the animal's energy.
Yeah.
Because that energy is going somewhere, and they like to take that energy in.
Yeah.
And I
Then
think
they
there's
just eat the heart and dance in the
there
blood.
are
and-
people that will
Yeah.
cut them open and eat the heart right
It's
there. Yeah,
well,
some
ritualistic
some
for a harvest.
cultures
or
do
for
that.
I wouldn't say a kill, but like yeah, for a harvest.
Yeah.
That would be a harvest. It's ritualistic. I guess.
It's
you know?
it's the same idea of, you know, at during the harvest feast in the fall. You know, you take a moment to appreciate the hard work that went into this. You're fortunate enough that the sun shone for you, the rain fell. You know, we're very fortunate. So to take a moment and appreciate that, I think it's a good thing. I think it's okay. It kind of brings us back to that humanity level, or that primitive level. That, you know, we're really at roots here with. Well, it's kind of a pun there, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't intend it.
Yeah.
You know, we're back at our roots when we're working with our hands, creating life. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
man.
It's amazing. And yeah, I remember my first harvest, my first real harvest. It was a critical hog, and
I
man,
grew that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
I had that one too.
to this day, I really enjoyed it. Again, first successful harvest, so I probably biased, but man, I remember like see these swollen arms, man. They're
Diesel.
huge. That's how big my colas were. And I was I was over the moon. And to this day, Critical Hog was probably one of my biggest, beefiest harvests. And I was feeding it Miracle Grow. It had Miracle Grow time release nutrients in the
Devil.
soil.
Good stuff back then.
Yeah, it's all you had, really,
Yeah,
right?
back then, you think that was the banger back then. You'd be like, just get some Miracle
It's
Grow,
a-
bro.
well, you can't, in Prohibition land, there was no advanced nutrients. I don't. Canada only like just got advanced nutrients like 10 years ago. So it's like in Prohibition land, all you had was Miracle Grow. People are like, yeah, at Fox Farm. We don't have Fox Farm in Canada. So it's like you might be able to get it now. I don't think you can, but you might be able to get it now. But all we had was Miracle Grow. That or HP hydroponics. Hydroponics.
GH?
Oh yeah, General Hydroponics.
General.
Yeah, now
also
Miracle
available.
Grow.
No.
It wasn't at the time, but GH we used to use quite a bit too. But yeah, it is so awesome to see how far things have come, man.
Dude, I mean, it's
now we've got lines of
unbelievable.
nutrients that are proprietarily honed to speak specifically to this plant, weaning off the CalMags and introducing the phosphoruses and sugars later in flower. And, these are things you just didn't have before. It was NPK.
Yep, 3-parters or 1-parter.
Yeah.
And there was not much science behind it. It was a lot of bro science.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
now there's so much efficiency in the process that there's no reason you're not growing good bud.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
I think with back then, total excuses. But now I don't care if Prohibition or not. The internet gives you an opportunity to learn. And you can see the difference between bro science and grow science. And then that's when you could find those successful middle grounds, I think that's where we are going to talk about it maybe on one of our trips out here of like our own personal evolution of 10 years of growing
Oof.
plus.
I think that'd be a good one.
When
yeah,
we
it'd be a good
started
episode.
from when I'm using a parabolic hood with the HID
Oh my
light,
God, yeah,
and
the
24
hoods.
plants under one light.
1,000 watt. I had
With a bunch of
2,000 watt.
CO2 canisters
HP.
with a non-sealed room.
What do you guys think? Do you think that's a good idea? We do an episode of like the evolution of our education, our learning over the course of the last
The journey,
10, 15 years.
the grow
Yeah,
journey
cool.
over.
What do you guys think?
We haven't done that yet, yeah.
Yeah, and if you guys are interested and you didn't know, we actually stream live on Twitch every single Thursday at about 1 Central, 2 Eastern, and 11 Pacific. Twitch.tv/FromTheStash, and we like to do a lot of things over there that we can't do over here. So make sure you come check it out. And if you're on the interwebs just looking for a place to hang out, you can also go to FromTheStash.com. You can go /merch, check out some of the merch that we've got available over there, and help support the show.
Well, and also, if you're not following us over on Twitch or Instagram or any of these other places, you won't know when we have those random Saturday Night Lives or Friday night
FTS
lives,
speed,
FTS
FTS after dark.
After Dark. We did.
FTS
We were
After
playing
Dark.
pool the other day, so if you're not following, you don't know.
Yeah. But more
That's what it
importantly, like I really want to hear from you guys. Now, of course, you can leave names out of it and maybe locations out of it to try to avoid prosecution, unfortunately,
Statute of limitations in some areas.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But we don't need to know that it was,
Ron.
George Michael
Yeah.
John who,
Yeah.
lives over in Beverly Street.
But are you
You
in
know.
Prohibition land? Are you looking to see if legalization is coming around the corner for you guys? I know a lot of states. It's an exciting time right now in the world of this plant because a lot of countries, a lot of states, a lot of provinces are changing regulation every single day. So if it could be prohibited for you today, but by tomorrow, things could be lifted up. We want to hear from you. So please leave a comment. And if you enjoy these live episodes, go ahead, leave a like. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you know exactly when we go live.
Absolutely.
Shout
Well,
out to
from the
AC.
stash.
Yeah.
And for AC Infinity, big shout out to them. It's your boy Rob, Mr. Grow It, Pigeon 420, Wink on the ones and twos. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.
Cut.